The amber glow of sunset streaked through the windows of Willow Crawford's home, illuminating the fine layer of dust that seemed to coat everything in Silver Creek, Colorado territory. 1875. She stood frozen at the threshold of her bedroom, her heart racing as memories flooded her mind, memories of the night her father had locked her in that very room before he took his last violent stand against the men who'd come to collect his gambling debts. The splintered doorframe, damaged during that fateful night 3 years ago, remained a jagged reminder of how the sheriff had broken it down to find her huddled in the corner, an orphaned girl of 18. "Miss Crawford," the deep voice behind her broke through her thoughts. "You all right there?" Willow turned to face Yates Buchanan, the tall cowboy who had arrived in Silver Creek just 2 weeks prior. With his sun-weathered skin, broad shoulders, and gentle eyes that seemed to understand more than they let on, he had quickly become the talk of the small town. He'd taken up work at the Wallace Ranch, proving himself capable and hardworking, and had offered to help repair things around her house when he heard she was struggling to maintain it alone. "I'm fine, Mr. Buchanan," Willow replied, smoothing down her simple blue dress. "And please call me Willow." Yates nodded, his eyes catching on the damaged doorframe. "That looks like it's seen better days." Willow's throat tightened. "Yes, it has." He approached the doorway, running his calloused fingers over the splintered wood. "I can fix this for you." Wouldn't take more than an afternoon. She wanted to refuse, to tell him she'd grown accustomed to sleeping in the small guest room down the hall, that she had no need for this bedroom with its ghosts and whispers. But the practicality of the offer was undeniable. If she ever hoped to sell the house, a prospect that seemed increasingly necessary given her dwindling savings, it would need to be in proper condition. "That would be kind of you," she finally said. "What do I owe you for such work?" Yates shook his head, a small smile playing at his lips. "Just some of that apple pie I smelled cooling on your windowsill would be payment enough." Willow couldn't help but return his smile. At 26, Yates Buchanan was unlike any of the other men in Silver Creek. There was no roughness to his speech, no demanding tone that she'd grown accustomed to from the men who frequented her dressmaking shop. "I'll be back tomorrow with the proper tools," he said, tipping his hat as he headed for the door. Willow nodded, watching him leave, unable to deny the flutter in her chest. She chided herself silently. A man like Yates Buchanan wasn't looking to settle down with a simple dressmaker with a haunted past. Men like him passed through towns like Silver Creek, leaving broken hearts in their wake. Yet the next morning, true to his word, Yates arrived with a wooden toolbox and materials to repair her doorframe. Willow tried to focus on her sewing, but found herself repeatedly glancing up from her work table in the front room to watch him. "You make all these dresses yourself?" Yates asked, noticing her current project, a deep green evening gown commissioned by the mayor's wife. "Yes," Willow answered, pride evident in her voice. "It's how I support myself since my father passed." Yates nodded appreciatively. "My mother was a seamstress back in Missouri. Used to say she could tell a person's character by how they treated her craftsmanship." "Your mother was a wise woman," Willow replied, surprised by this glimpse into his past. As Yates worked on the doorframe, he told her stories of his travels of the mountains in Colorado, the vast plains of Kansas, the bustling cities back east. Willow found herself drawn to his tales, to the sound of his voice that seemed to fill the emptiness of her home. By midday, the doorframe was taking shape, the splintered wood replaced with smooth, sturdy pine. When Yates stopped for lunch, Willow served him apple pie as promised, along with cold lemonade. "May I ask what happened to the doorframe?" Yates inquired carefully, his fork pausing halfway to his mouth. Willow stiffened, then sighed. The story was well known in town anyway. My father had gambling debts. 3 years ago, men came to collect. He wasn't a good man when he drank, and that night he'd had plenty. He locked me in my room for my protection before confronting them. She swallowed hard. There was gunfire. By the time the sheriff broke down my door, my father was dead and I was alone. Yates' expression softened with understanding. That explains why you haven't fixed it yourself all this time. I haven't slept in that room since, she admitted, but it needs to be repaired if I ever hope to sell this place. You're planning to leave Silver Creek. There was a note of disappointment in his voice. Willow shrugged. I don't know. Sometimes it feels like there's nothing keeping me here. Their eyes met across the table, and for a moment, something unspoken passed between them. Yates cleared his throat and returned to his pie. This is delicious, by the way. The afternoon wore on, and as the sun began to set, Yates put the finishing touches on the doorframe. It stood sturdy and smooth, no evidence remaining of the violence that had marred it. There, he said, stepping back to admire his work. Good as new. Willow approached slowly, her hand reaching out to touch the fresh wood. A lump formed in her throat as she stared into the bedroom that had been her prison that terrible night. Sensing her hesitation, Yates gently placed a hand on her shoulder. You don't have to go in there, Willow. Take your time. The kindness in his voice nearly broke her. How long had it been since someone had shown her such consideration? In Silver Creek, she was the odd one out, the dressmaker who lived alone, who kept to herself, whose father had died in disgrace. Thank you, she whispered, unable to meet his eyes for fear he'd see the tears welling in hers. Yates gathered his tools, respecting her need for space. I'll be heading back to the Wallace Ranch. If you need anything else repaired, you just let me know. Willow nodded, finally looking up at him. Will I see you in town? A slow smile spread across his face. I reckon you will. The Wallace Ranch hands get Saturday evenings off. Perhaps I'll see you at the social this weekend. Willow hadn't attended a town social since before her father's death. The thought of the whispers, the sidelong glances made her stomach knot. But the thought of seeing Yates again. Perhaps you will, she replied with a small smile. After he left, Willow stood before the bedroom door for a long time. The memories were still there, but somehow the new doorframe made them feel less immediate, less suffocating. She didn't enter the room that night, but for the first time in 3 years, she believed that someday she might. The Saturday social arrived with clear skies and a warm breeze. Willow had spent hours deliberating over which dress to wear, before settling on a pale blue one that brought out the color of her eyes. She'd even pinned her hair up with her mother's pearl combs, treasures she rarely used. The town hall buzzed with activity. Farmers, ranchers, shopkeepers, and their families all gathered for an evening of music and dancing. Willow entered hesitantly, immediately feeling the weight of curious stares. She seldom appeared at social functions, and never looking as she did tonight. She was about to retreat when a familiar voice called her name. Yates stood by the refreshment table, dressed in clean trousers and a pressed shirt, his usual hat absent to reveal dark hair neatly combed. The sight of him made her heart skip. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come, he said, offering her a cup of punch. I nearly didn't, she admitted, accepting the drink with a grateful smile. Yates leaned closer, his voice dropping so only she could hear. I'm glad you did. You're the prettiest woman in the room. Willow blushed, unused to such direct compliments. Before she could respond, the band struck up a lively tune. Yates held out his hand. May I have this dance, Miss Crawford? Despite her nerves, Willow found herself placing her hand in his. You may, Mr. Buchanan. They joined the other couples on the dance floor, and to Willow's surprise, Yates was a skilled dancer. He led her confidently, his hand warm and steady at her waist. "Where did a cowboy learn to dance like this?" she asked, impressed. Yates laughed, a rich sound that warmed her. "My mother insisted her sons be gentlemen as well as cowboys, said we'd never find proper wives otherwise." "And have you found a proper wife?" The question slipped out before Willow could stop it, his eyes locked with hers. "Not yet, but I'm hopeful." The music slowed and Yates drew her slightly closer, his hand a gentle pressure on her back. Willow was acutely aware of the stares they were attracting, of the whispers behind hands. "People are talking," she murmured. "Let them," Yates replied simply. "They'll always talk. It's what folks in small towns do." As the evening progressed, Willow found herself caring less about the gossip. Yates introduced her to some of the other ranch hands and their wives, people who greeted her warmly without a hint of judgment. For the first time in years, she felt included, welcomed. When the dance ended, Yates offered to walk her home. The night air had cooled, and he draped his jacket around her shoulders without being asked. "I had a wonderful time tonight," Willow said as they approached her house. "As did I," Yates replied, his steps slowing as they reached her porch. "Willow, I'd like to call on you properly if you'll allow it." Willow's breath caught. "You wish to court me?" "I do," he answered, his expression sincere in the moonlight. "There's something special about you, Willow Crawford. I knew it the moment I saw you." She hesitated, years of isolation making her wary. "You hardly know me." "I'd like the chance to change that," Yates said, taking her hand gently in his. "Unless you're opposed to the idea," Willow looked up at him, this man who had repaired more than just her doorframe. "I'm not opposed," she whispered. His smile was radiant. "Then I'll call on you tomorrow afternoon if that suits you." Willow nodded, and Yates lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a gentle kiss to her knuckles before bidding her good night. She watched him walk away, her heart lighter than it had been in years. True to his word, Yates began calling on Willow regularly. Sunday afternoons were spent walking through town or picnicking by Silver Creek. During the week, he would often stop by her shop during his trips into town, sometimes bringing wildflowers or a piece of ribbon he thought she might like for her sewing. The townsfolk noticed, of course. Some were supportive, especially those who had come to know Yates at the Wallace Ranch. Others were more skeptical, including Mrs. Hollister, the banker's wife who was one of Willow's most demanding customers. "I hear you've been keeping company with that new ranch hand," Mrs. Hollister remarked one day as Willow pinned the hem of her new dress. "You should be careful, dear. Men like that rarely stay in one place for long." Willow kept her eyes on her work, pushing the pins into the fabric with perhaps more force than necessary. "Mr. Buchanan's plans are his own business, Mrs. Hollister." "Of course, dear," the older woman said with a patronizing smile. "I just wouldn't want to see you hurt, especially after everything you've been through." Willow bit her tongue, refusing to give the gossip any more fuel, but Mrs. Hollister's words lingered in her mind. What did she really know about Yates Buchanan and his intentions? He spoke of wanting to know her better, but he'd never mentioned his plans to stay in Silver Creek long term. That evening, as they walked along the creek after supper, Willow found herself unusually quiet. "What's troubling you?" Yates asked, noticing her distraction. Willow hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "Mrs. Hollister suggested that you might not be planning to stay in Silver Creek, that men like you move on." Yates sighed, stopping to face her. "Mrs. Hollister doesn't know the first thing about men like me." "Yes, I've traveled a fair bit, but I've been looking for a place that feels like home." His eyes held hers steadily. "I think I might have found it, in Silver Creek," Willow asked, hardly daring to hope. "In Silver Creek," he confirmed, taking her hands in his. "With you." Relief washed over her, followed swiftly by a wave of emotion she wasn't ready to name. I'm glad to hear it. As summer turned to autumn, Willow and Yates' courtship became the talk of Silver Creek. He had proven himself to be reliable and hardworking, earning the respect of Wallace and the other ranch hands. Willow found herself smiling more, laughing more, the weight of her past lifting gradually with each day in his company. One crisp October evening, Yates invited her to dinner at the hotel restaurant, a rare luxury in Silver Creek. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his collar and repeatedly checking his pocket as if ensuring something was still there. "Is everything all right?" Willow asked after they'd ordered. Yates took a deep breath. "I have something to ask you, but first, there's something you should know about me." Willow's heart sank. Here it came, the revelation that would shatter the happiness she'd found. "What is it?" "My family name isn't actually Buchanan," he said, his voice low. "It's Blackburn." Willow frowned, confused. "You changed your name. Why?" Yates, or whatever his name was, looked uncomfortable. "My father was Jerome Blackburn. He owned a large cattle operation in Missouri." The name meant nothing to Willow, and her confusion must have shown on her face. "You wouldn't have heard of him here," Yates continued. "But back east, during the war, he supplied beef to the Union Army, made a fortune doing it. When he died 5 years ago, he left the business to me and my brothers. So you're wealthy." Willow was struggling to understand why this warranted a false name. "Reasonably so," Yates admitted. "I came west because I wanted to learn the cattle business from the ground up, not just as the boss's son. I changed my name so I would be treated like any other cowhand. I wanted to earn respect, not have it handed to me because of my father's money." Relief flooded through Willow. "That's your big secret, that you're actually Yates Blackburn, cattle baron's son." A tentative smile tugged at his lips. "You're not angry that I wasn't entirely truthful?" "I understand wanting to escape a father's reputation better than most," Willow said softly. "But why are you telling me this now?" Yates reached across the table to take her hand. "Because I can't ask you what I'm about to ask you while hiding who I really am." He withdrew a small box from his pocket and opened it to reveal a delicate gold ring set with a small diamond. "Willow Crawford, I love you. Would you do me the honor of becoming my wife?" Willow gasped, tears springing to her eyes. In that moment, all her doubts and fears seemed to melt away. This man, whether Buchanan or Blackburn, had shown her nothing but kindness, respect, and love. "Yes," she whispered, then more confidently. "Yes, I will marry you, Yates." His face lit up with joy as he slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly, catching the candlelight like a promise. "There's more," he said, squeezing her hand. "I've purchased land outside of town, 300 acres with a view of the mountains. I plan to start my own ranch here, build us a proper home." Willow's mind reeled at the possibilities unfolding before her. "You're really staying in Silver Creek?" "Building a life here, building a life with you," Yates corrected. "If that's what you want." Willow looked down at the ring on her finger, then back up at the man who had unexpectedly changed her world. "It's everything I want." The news of their engagement spread quickly through Silver Creek. Most offered congratulations, though some, like Mrs. Hollister, expressed skepticism when they learned of Yates' true identity. "Convenient how this supposed fortune appears just as he's proposing marriage," she remarked to Willow during a fitting. Willow merely smiled, secure in what she knew of Yates' character. "Mrs. Hollister, I appreciate your concern, but I trust the man I'm marrying." The banker's wife sniffed dismissively, but said no more on the subject. In the weeks that followed, Yates' claims were proven true when men arrived from Missouri with papers establishing the Blackburn Ranch. Construction began on a house that would be grand by Silver Creek standards, but modest compared to what Yates could have afforded. He insisted on doing much of the work himself, enlisting help from the other ranch hands who had become his friends. Meanwhile, Willow continued running her dressmaking business, though she now had plans to expand. With Yates' encouragement, she hired an assistant, a young widow named Sarah, who had a talent for embroidery, and began taking orders for wedding dresses from as far away as Denver. As their wedding approached, scheduled for the first day of spring, Willow found herself facing a decision. The house where she had lived all her life, where her mother had died giving birth to a stillborn brother when Willow was 10, where her father had met his violent end, what would become of it? We could keep it, Yates suggested as they discussed the matter. Use it as a shop for your dressmaking business. Willow considered the idea. The location in town was certainly convenient for customers. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, but first, there's something I need to do. The following Sunday after church services, Willow asked Yates to accompany her home. They walked in comfortable silence, his hand warm around hers. When they reached the house, she led him straight to the bedroom with the repaired doorframe. She stood before it, taking a deep breath. I haven't been in this room since that night. Yates squeezed her hand. You don't have to go in now, Willow. Take your time. She turned to look at him, love swelling in her heart for this man who always seemed to know what she needed. That's just it. I've taken my time, 3 years of it. I think I'm ready now. With Yates beside her, Willow crossed the threshold into the bedroom. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the curtains. The bed was still made, exactly as it had been the last time she slept there. A hairbrush lay on the dressing table, a book on the nightstand. Memories washed over her not just of that terrible night, but of the years before. Of her mother brushing her hair at that very dressing table. Of reading by lamplight long after she should have been asleep. This room had been hers long before it became a prison. It feels smaller than I remembered, she said softly. Yates remained quiet, letting her process the moment in her own way. Finally, she turned to him with clear eyes. I think you're right. This house should become my shop. A place of creation rather than memories. She smiled, feeling as if a weight had lifted from her shoulders. And I think I'll move my things out of the guest room and back in here until our wedding day. Yates pulled her into a gentle embrace. I'm proud of you, Willow. In the months leading up to their wedding, Willow reclaimed her childhood bedroom. She aired it out, washed the linens, and even repainted the walls a soft yellow. Each night she slept there was a small victory, a step further from the past that had held her captive for so long. The house on the Blackburn Ranch was completed just in time for their wedding, a handsome 2-story structure with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, offering views of both the mountains and the rolling grasslands. Yates had insisted on a large bedroom with tall windows to let in plenty of light for Willow's sewing. Their wedding day dawned clear and bright, the first day of spring bringing promises of renewal. The small church in Silver Creek was filled to capacity, with ranchers, townspeople, and even a contingent from Missouri representing the Blackburn family interests. When Willow walked down the aisle in a dress of her own creation, ivory satin with intricate beadwork, that had taken weeks to complete, gasps of admiration filled the church. But she had eyes only for Yates, standing tall and handsome at the altar, looking at her as if she were the most precious thing he'd ever seen. You are a vision, he whispered as she reached him. The ceremony was simple but heartfelt. They exchanged vows they had written themselves, promises not just of love and fidelity, but of understanding and patience. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, Yates' kiss was gentle yet filled with promise. The celebration afterward was held at their new home, with tables set up in the yard and lanterns strung between trees that would someday provide shade. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and for Willow, a sense of belonging that she had thought lost forever. As evening fell, the guests gradually departed, leaving the newlyweds alone in their home for the first time. Yates led Willow through each room, pointing out details he had included with her in mind: built-in bookshelves in the sitting room, a special cabinet for her sewing supplies, a window seat where she could work in natural light. Finally, they reached the master bedroom. Yates paused at the threshold, a mischievous smile playing at his lips. "What is it?" Willow asked, curious about his expression. "I just realized," he said, "this will be the first time you're entering this bedroom. I wanted to make sure you were ready." Willow's heart swelled with love for this man who remembered her struggles, who had never pushed but always supported. She reached up to touch his face, her wedding ring catching the lamplight. "I'm ready," she said softly. "With you, I'm not afraid." Yates swept her into his arms, carrying her over the threshold as she laughed in delight. He set her down gently beside the bed, his hands moving to cup her face. "I love you, Willow Blackburn," he said, his voice husky with emotion. "And I love you, Yates Blackburn," she replied, standing on tiptoe to kiss him. Their life together unfolded with the seasons. The Blackburn Ranch grew steadily, becoming known for its quality cattle and fair business practices. Willow's dressmaking business flourished, with her wedding gowns in particular gaining fame throughout Colorado territory. They converted her childhood home into a proper shop, with Sarah managing it when Willow couldn't be there. A year after their wedding, Willow gave birth to a daughter they named Elizabeth, after Yates' mother. The baby had Willow's delicate features and Yates' dark hair, and from the moment she arrived, she had both her parents wrapped around her tiny fingers. "She's perfect," Yates whispered the first time he held her, tears in his eyes. "She is," Willow agreed, exhausted but radiant. "And so is this life we've built." As Elizabeth grew, so did their family and their businesses. A son joined them 2 years later, James, a sturdy boy with his father's height and his mother's gentle nature. Yates' brothers visited from Missouri, bringing business opportunities and family connections that helped cement the Blackburns' position in Colorado society. Through it all, Willow never forgot the moment that had changed everything, standing before a broken door frame with a cowboy who told her to take her time. She had taken that time, healing at her own pace, finding strength she didn't know she possessed. 5 years to the day after Yates had repaired her door frame, Willow found him on the porch of their home, watching the sunset paint the mountains in shades of gold and crimson. Their children were playing in the yard, their laughter a counterpoint to the evening bird song. "Do you ever think about how different our lives might have been if you hadn't offered to fix my door frame that day?" she asked, settling beside him on the porch swing. Yates smiled, pulling her close against his side. "I think about it often. How a broken piece of wood led me to the woman who would make my life whole." Willow leaned her head on his shoulder, watching their children chase fireflies in the gathering dusk. "I was so broken then, Yates, just like that door frame." "No," he corrected gently. "You were never broken, Willow. Wounded, perhaps, scarred, but never broken. You just needed time to see your own strength." She looked up at him, this man who had seen her value when she couldn't see it herself. "I'm glad you gave me that time." "I would have waited forever for you," Yates said simply, pressing a kiss to her forehead. As night fell over the Blackburn Ranch, stars appearing one by one in the vast Colorado sky, Willow thought about doorways, those that had closed in her past, and those that had opened to her future. She had crossed the most difficult threshold long ago, stepping out of fear and into love. Every day since had been a gift, a journey taken hand in hand with the man beside her. The broken door frame that had once symbolized her captivity had become, through Yates' gentle repair and patience, a threshold to freedom. And in crossing it, Willow Crawford Blackburn had found not just a husband, but a home that existed wherever they were together. In the years that followed, Silver Creek grew from a small settlement into a proper town. The Blackburn Ranch expanded, becoming one of the largest and most respected operations in Colorado. Willow's dressmaking business opened a second location in Denver, managed by Sarah, while Willow oversaw the original shop in Silver Creek. Their children grew strong and kind under their parents' loving guidance. Elizabeth showed a talent for design that rivaled her mother's, while James had his father's head for business. They added 2 more children to their family, twins Michael and Margaret, born on a snowy December night when Willow was 30. Through celebrations and challenges, through droughts and prosperous years, through the ordinary days that make up a life well lived, Yates and Willow remained steadfast in their love for each other. The tenderness with which he had first told her to take her time never faded, becoming instead the foundation upon which they built their marriage. On their 20th wedding anniversary, their children arranged a celebration at the ranch, inviting friends and family from near and far. The house and yard were decorated with flowers and lanterns, tables groaning with food, music filling the air as couples danced under the stars. As evening fell, Yates led Willow away from the festivities to the quiet of their porch. From a pocket he withdrew a small package wrapped in silver paper. "What's this?" Willow asked, surprised. "Open it," Yates encouraged, his eyes warm with love. Inside the package, Willow found a locket. When she opened it, she gasped to see a tiny fragment of wood carefully preserved behind glass. "Is this?" she began, her voice trailing off with emotion. "A piece of the original door frame," Yates confirmed. "I saved it all these years, to remind us where we started." Tears filled Willow's eyes as she looked up at the man who had been her strength, her partner, her greatest love for 2 decades. "I don't need reminders of where we started," she said softly. "Not when every day with you shows me how far we've come." Yates fastened the locket around her neck, his fingers brushing against her skin. 20 years ago, I fixed a door frame and fell in love with the woman who couldn't cross the threshold. Today, there isn't a door in the world that could keep us apart." As they rejoined their celebration, surrounded by the family they had created and the community they had helped build, Willow thought about time, how it healed wounds, built dreams, strengthened love. Yates had given her time when she needed it most, and she had given him her heart in return. Their story, begun with a broken door frame and gentle words, had become a testament to patience and understanding, to love that respects boundaries and celebrates strength. And as they danced under the Colorado stars, Willow knew with absolute certainty that some doors, once opened, lead to places more beautiful than we could ever imagine if only we have the courage to step through them, and someone who loves us enough to say, "Take your time."